not on now, bro.
Jadi trong cái lòng đó nó rồi.
Tại nó mute nó lại off nó không tắm không?
Cái này nghe.
Tại anh mute nó nè. Đây video start na.
Cái gì mà
Kun saan na video mi.
Tuang, can speaker pa kataron luton on.
Boleh.
Anh ấy tụi em buồn tụi em tụi em buồn.
Anh nói video start có tắm không? Anh đủ cho anh một cách thấy có hay video off lại on là hay. Chỉ cần video off ta then on lại. Anh screen sharing hay vậy ta. Anh off lại.
Hi, Subroto.
Video off tắm.
You mute your audio.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, maybe I should use the headphone. It would be better, I think.
No, that's fine. I'm using it because there's some noise out.
Yeah. Anyway, I'll keep it handy.
Sure.
In case, yeah.
Video lòng về lâu mới là với các bạn. Sẽ nó anh tin nó on là sẽ
Ani mo niya inte I sound ka long niyan to pa. In lo vela hanin unmute ti vel khan omem ay ning lovem. Ani mo. Oh, kalau kalau vem de ke shimshimang.
Hello.
Hello. Hi.
Hello, Mr. Smith.
Hello. How are you, Dr. Dalte?
Fine.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Good to see you all.
Are you ready?
Yeah. I think so. It's also on live on YouTube, it seems, right? I mean, I see that live.
Yes, sir. It's live on YouTube.
Okay.
I will be sharing the link on the chat box. In the chat box, it's already already streamed live now.
Okay. Yeah.
And also, if you want to share your screen, your laptop screen, if you have a presentation to make a PowerPoint presentation.
No, I don't. Okay.
Oh, you don't have. Okay, that's fine then.
No, I mean, can I see who's talking? I mean, it would be nice to see people around.
You can, yeah, it's Lalrin Sani.
Okay, yeah, I got it, I think, yeah.
Yeah, and also in the chat box, the YouTube link, participants may copy that. And you can also share it.
Right. And I think they can ask questions here also, no? In case there is some
yes, definitely.
issue with the audio, they can type it here as well. Yeah. Okay. So how are you going about it? Hello, Phila. Good to see you. Is it raining there in Mizoram now?
It's not raining. We have a.
Okay. So are you a student or a professor for at Lalgiri?
I'm actually an assistant professor in the department.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll hand over Tuanga, and since we are using my Zoom app, I'm just taking control of it right now. So Tuanga will be taking care of the the whole thing.
Yeah.
Rin. Oh. Enge ilu thelo mi.
Dr. Tung, I think we can proceed. Like if we are all ready.
Sir, Rinmoy is actually having a problem right now. She will be joining soon. She's going to host the program, so we're waiting for her.
Okay, sure. Yeah.
Yeah, we can wait for another.
She has
10
a
minutes, no problem.
slight problem unmuting
Mhm.
her audio, so that is why
No
she's
issues,
not
no
able
issues.
to.
Yeah. Please take your time, no problem.
Rinmoy, are you there? Rin, your audio is already unmuted. Your video looks fine, but I think we cannot hear your voice. Tuanga,
Yes. Okay. Anyway,
Rinmoy,
if Rinmoy
wait.
has
I
a problem,
think
we
it's
can start.
in process in kasha. Rinmoy audio atyang lawa.
Okay.
Rin, hanchong lete.
Audio alam mute na iki.
Unmute to rin ka request to mase atyang lawa di may the.
Ito, anoy fail. Rinmoy,
Ay,
Rini.
unmute to atikan.
Anoy fail ma kan mute ki le. Ole tikan dike.
Ay, unmute to mase atong ri the zong lo hanchong le lok te rin. She the lo.
A volume zo in game oh.
In lo I laptop volume vel ka han check te. Tingele oh. Tung sha the mi alo rin.
Log in non le se azia dong em le. So fang em.
Rini na eng lo swing tuang I chan put may don na mi niya. Rini tiang lo. Tuang nang makani chan may don na mi niya.
Yes.
Rini eng lo the lo.
Okay, good morning to you all, dear participants. Today, our webinar topic will be social and educational inclusion and exclusion. Social educational exclusion and inclusion in the context of Mizoram and India. First of all, we'll request our speaker, Dr. Vanarudfel Londo. He's now working in assistant professor in Institute of Advanced Studies in Education, ISOL. Let us invite Dr. Vanarudfel Londo to present his slide and his topic.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Jonah. Uh, yeah, uh, the theme of our webinar is on, as said, social and educational inclusion and exclusion in the context of Mizoram and India. And I will be focusing more on the educational inclusion and exclusion. And I hope Subroto will be talking about, will be talking more on the social exclusion and inclusion. Uh, and I have prepared a slide. I will share my screen here. And sorry. Okay, I hope you can see my screen here. Okay. Okay, so as I've said, I'll be talking. I hope it is visible for all, to all. Is it visible to all?
Yes, yes,
Okay. Okay, so
yes,
as I
sir.
have said, I will be talking more on the educational inclusion and exclusion, and that too in the context of Mizoram. Okay, and as you can see it from my slide here, in Mizoram, formal education was non-existent prior to 1894, and it was only because of the Christian missionaries that we are introduced to the formal education. And before the introduction of formal education by the British missionaries, we don't have such formal education as we have uh, uh, now, and all the educations are imparted through informal, and we have there was an institution known as Zolbu, and which means bachelor's dormitory, which imparted knowledge, traditions, customs, etc. to boys and young men. And since Zolbu was entirely for the male member of the society, there was no institution to educate girls other than the family. And why I'm mentioning this is that the topic that we are talking about right now is about inclusion. And when we talk about inclusion and inclusive education, the main issues that we addressed are like the gender problem, the disability problem, and the socioeconomic problem. And so it clearly shows that women education are completely excluded from the education system at that time. So in the past, women were considered to be far inferior to men in wisdom, physical strength, and values. And the attitude of the society as a whole may be understood from some of the popular sayings. Here I have mentioned some sayings here. The wisdom of a woman does not reach beyond the village spring, and a wife and an orphan can always be replaced. The idea of a woman cannot be taken as idea in the same way that a crab's meat cannot be counted as meat. And from these sayings alone, we can clearly know the attitude or the situation or the condition of women in uh, uh, Mizo society during that time. So they are not only excluded in the education field, but also they are the way they look at women in those periods can be clearly seen from this saying. And my presentation will be excuse me for 1 minute. Sorry.
Rebecca, please mute your audio.
Okay. And that is the situation that we have seen in the past in Mizo society. And coming to our today's education system, now we can divide our education system into three main categories, especially at the school level. And the first one is special education. We may have heard the concept special education, and special education believes that special methods, special teachers, special environments, and special equipments are needed to teach special children. Here, special children refers to children with disabilities or children with special needs. And special education sees the child as the problem, not the system or the teacher. In a special school, children grow up with their disability peers and develop a common culture. So if we educate our students in a segregated manner, so they can easily grow up with their disability or their condition, and they can easily develop a common culture among them, and they find it difficult to integrate with the general students. And integrated education, we have integrated education, and the focus is still on the individual child, not the system. And the child is seen as a problem and must be made ready for integration rather than the school being made ready. And the integrated child will either just be left to cope with a rigid mainstream system with no support, or will receive individual attention that separates them out from their peers. And lastly, we have inclusive education. And this is what I am going to stress about also in this during this presentation. And it is about all children learning together if they differ from each other in styles and pace of learning. And it is a dynamic process because it addresses all aspects of child development: emotional, physical, intellectual, creative, social, etc. And it is about celebrating diversity and changing the rigid school system in order to meet the needs of all children. So if you carefully look at these three different types of education, uh, you can easily differentiate them. Like the first one is special education, specially meant for special children. And integrated education, here in integrated education, we have integrated our students, like all students are integrated in one school, but they are physically integrated, but uh, as you can see from the slide, the child is seen as the problem and must be made ready for integration rather than the school being made ready. This is the characteristics of integrated education. Like whatever infrastructure is available there in a particular school, and we always expect the students to adjust himself with the problems, and the school don't make necessary changes in order to accommodate that special students. So that is the nature of integrated education. And when it comes to inclusive education, it is about all children learning together if they differ from each other in styles and pace learning. And here, the main difference between integrated education and inclusive education is that the child is no longer seen as a problem here in inclusive education, but the system is seen as a problem. So that's the main difference between integrated and inclusive education. And coming to the looking at the education system that we have here in Mizoram, we have different type of schools like private schools, government aided schools, and government schools. And all government schools are considered inclusive schools, especially at the elementary stage. So the good thing about government schools in Mizoram is that they never deny admission to admission to they never deny admission to any students. But the problem is, admitting them is just the beginning of the problem. So the main thing is that if they physically included them, but if the way they teach and the way the teaching learning process takes place is not, uh, uh, or cannot cater to the needs of all students, and it might be difficult to consider those schools as inclusive schools or to provide inclusive education. We cannot say that they provide inclusive education. So inclusive education starts from the belief that the right to education is basic. Uh, Basic human rights and the foundation for a more just society. Inclusive education is concerned with all learners, uh, with a focus on those who have traditionally been excluded from educational opportunities, such as learners with special needs and disabilities, children from ethnic and linguistic minorities, and so on. So in order to include all these types of students in India and even in Mizoram, we have this Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan and Rashtriya Madhyamik Shiksha Abhiyan. Now we have Samagra Shiksha Abhiyan, of course, and we have a particular intervention for to include all children under these schemes also, like not only the students with disability, but also like from other ethnic and linguistic minorities. And we even have a bridge course so that we can we can uh, integrate and include those students after getting those bridge courses. And inclusive education is a system that caters to the needs of all children, and especially to those students who are vulnerable of being excluded from the education system due to various factors like gender, disability, socioeconomic status, linguistic minorities, etc. So those vulnerable, students, like it might be because of their gender, it might be because of their disability, or it might be because of their socioeconomic status, linguistic minorities. They cannot be denied admission to any schools. Now we even have this Right to Education Act, and right to education is a fundamental right now in India. And after 86 amendment of our constitution, and before that, it was in Article 45, and which is under directive principles of state policy. Now it was in Article 21A, which is, and it becomes a fundamental right now. So free and compulsory education for all children between 6 to 14 years is compulsory here. Free, and it should be free, and it should be compulsory. So no students cannot be excluded due to any reason. And inclusive education is about allowing and accepting all children to enjoy their rights and providing opportunity for quality education to all children. Inclusive education is also about developing a system that addresses individual differences among the students so that the need of the individual learner can be met successfully. Here, what is very important if we are to offer inclusive education in our institution is that we have to recognize the individual differences. That is very, very important, because we often say that no two individuals are exactly alike. So if no, if even identical twins, we often say, so even if identical twins are not have difference, so the way we treat our students, we have to recognize that difference. Otherwise, we cannot have a successful inclusion in our institution. And so here in inclusive education in Mizoram, I will be talking that I retrieve some data from my research. So I will try to highlight some points which I think is relevant for this presentation. So I have surveyed, I've done I've surveyed 120 government elementary schools from 4 districts in Mizoram. And these are the findings based on that study. And in majority of the schools, there were some teachers who did not undergo training on inclusive education. Headmasters in majority of the schools had undergone training on inclusive education. So as you can see from here, majority of the schools, there were some teachers who did not undergo training on inclusive education, and which means that if they are not very much acquainted with the concept of inclusive education, and if the teacher themselves are not acquainted with the concept of inclusive education, then we cannot expect successful inclusion in that school. So, and majority of the schools followed zero rejection policy, which means no child is denied admission on the basis of caste, color, sex, disability, etc. This is a very good news, good findings, but at the same time, uh, 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 as I have seen in those schools while collecting data that they, as I've said before, it is more like integrated school. They don't reject students because of their caste or color or sex or disability, but it's just a physical inclusion, but looking at the curriculum, the syllabus, the way they teach and the lesson plans that they have might not be that useful for some students. Suppose you have intellectually challenged students or hearing impaired students or visually impaired students. And if you don't have a separate individualized educational plan for them, then it won't work for them. So physical inclusion is there, but the process, the teaching learning process, it, it might not help much. Uh, it might not help those students much. And there exists a significant difference between the rural and urban elementary school teachers with regards to their attitude towards inclusive education. Rural elementary school teachers have a more positive attitude towards inclusive education than the urban teachers. Here, I don't know how to elaborate these findings, but it is very clear from these findings that rural teachers have a more positive attitude towards inclusive education, and we all know how important attitude is, right? In order to implement successful inclusion, then inclusive education. And opinion of parents about the different aspects of inclusive education. Here, my research is with special reference to children with special needs only. And because in Mizoram, we don't have, the gender issue is not that big as compared to some other parts of India. So I concentrated more on the education of children with special needs. So here are some of the opinion of parents about the different aspects of inclusive education. And the first one is, for the education of CWSN, special school is most preferred by parents. We all know what special school is, right? So for the education of CWSN, special school is most preferred by parents. Uh, my I have included 320 parents as my sample for this. And for the education of CWSN, special school is most preferred by parents. But though special school is most preferred by parents, majority of parents of children with special needs preferred inclusive schools over special school. Integrated school is clearly not the option of parents for the education of CWSN. This somehow, highlight the attitude of, parents of normal children, because they want those, it seems that they don't want those children with special needs to mix with their normal children, it seems, because the majority of the student, the parents preferred special schools, but parents of CWSN preferred inclusive school over special school. And majority of the parents consider the combination of both special and general teacher as best suited to teach CWSN. And majority of the parents wanted pre-primary level as the implementing stage for inclusive education. No respondents among male, rural, and parents of CWSN recommended initiating inclusive education at the upper primary stage. And majority of the parents want the school to treat CWSN as the same as their normal peers. And it was found that ignoring CWSN in the school was the least preferred treatment by the respondents. Here, you may think that this is, you may not know the importance of uh, 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 this this kind of information. Like majority of the parents want the school to treat CWSN as the same as their normal peers, because in some schools they give special attention to children with special needs, and sometimes it makes some problem for them also. Like suppose if you have a mild intellectually challenged students in your school, and if you pay special attention all the time to him or her, and then other children will definitely know that there's some problem with him or her. So giving them the special attention all the time is not favorable treatment. And majority of the parents wants the evaluation system in an inclusive schools to be flexible to meet the needs of CWSN. Same evaluation system for both CWSN and non-CWSN was recommended by some parents, and while majority of the parents of normal children wanted flexible evaluation to meet the needs of CWSN, parents of CWSN preferred both flexible evaluation system and same evaluation system for both CWSN and non-CWSN. And since the topic we are talking about right now is inclusive education, uh, the evaluation system in an inclusive schools should be flexible, but usually in not necessarily in Mizoram but also in other states, at the end of the academic session, students will have to write uh, exactly the same students have to answer exactly the same sets of questions at the end, like even like whether it is class 2 or class 7 or class 8. But sometimes that makes some it can create some problem to those children with special needs. So in that case, the teacher must be flexible enough to prepare a separate set of questions for children based on their problem, so that you know uh, they can have like, why I'm saying this is that because if you try to teach moderate intellectually challenged students about trigonometry, he or she might not learn. So instead you can teach them a simple addition or simple subtraction maybe, it may work better for him. And parents held different opinion on why inclusive education is needed. A large section of the parents held the opinion that inclusive education is needed as it develops social and interpersonal skills of both CWSN and non-CWSN. This is again, very important. If we segregate, students based on their disability, let's say for an example, in a blind school, hearing impaired in a hearing impaired school, and intellectually challenged in intellectually challenged school, it you know uh, as I have said before, they will develop their own culture, so they will find it difficult to mix with other peers, and they will have some social problem later in their life. And some parents thought that it is needed as it provides CWSN more chances to participate in a wide variety of activities. Majority of the parents of CWSN and rural respondents thought that inclusive education is needed as it develops social and interpersonal skills of both CWSN and non-CWSN. An opinion of parents on the greatest barrier for successful inclusion varies. Negative attitude of parents got the highest percentage as the greatest barrier for successful inclusion by the overall respondents, followed by the negative attitude of non-CWSN, which is again followed by lack of skills by teachers and negative attitude of teachers. Physical and architectural barrier is the least considered barrier as opined by the overall respondents. Here, this clearly shows that the importance of attitude uh, of a particular group or of a particular individual. So here, as you can see, negative attitude of parents got the highest percentage in the greatest barrier for successful inclusion. So we can tell how important attitude is. And headmasters are not responsible for, are most responsible for successful implementation of inclusive education in the opinion of most of the respondents, followed by parents, and then again followed by community. And as per the responses of all the respondents, peer was considered the least responsible for successful implementation of inclusive education. And positive attitude of teacher is considered the most important to ensure successful inclusion, followed by the adequate number of human resources, which is again followed by good policy. Barrier-free environment is least chosen by the overall respondents to ensure successful inclusion. And as against the opinion of the overall respondents, according to the parents of CWSM, adequate number of human resources is the most important aspect to ensure successful inclusion. And again, the overall opinion was also contradicted by the opinion of urban respondents. According to them, good policy is the most important aspect to ensure successful inclusion. And uh, so that's all for my presentation from the slides. And if you have any questions, because I don't know how to like what the audience will expect, so I confined my presentation only on the educational inclusion or inclusive education. So if you have any questions, and if I am able to answer it, and then you can put your question on the chat box, or I don't know. So I'll hand over the program to the host.
Okay.
Now.
Hello, am I audible now?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, I'm so sorry for the problem. There seems to be something wrong with my microphone, so I'm talking from the phone. Hello? Okay. Mr. One second, please. Hello? Okay. Hello? Am I audible?
Yes, we can hear you. Yeah.
You're
Okay,
audible.
thank you. Okay. I'm so sorry for the technical problems. And I thank Mr. Rodfield Londo for his very insightful and informative presentation and input. And since we are a little bit pressed for time today, we shall call upon the next speaker, Mr. Subroto Day. Since I wasn't able to hear anything during the first, yeah, hello?
Yes, we can hear
Hello?
you.
Yes,
Yeah.
we can hear you.
Okay, I'm so
Can
sorry.
hear.
Yeah, okay, Mr. Subroto, I think you can start your talk now.
Okay.
Wait, 1 second, please. Yeah. Has Mr. Tlong given you an introduction? I wasn't able to hear anything on the first half. Were you given an introduction?
No, maybe you could introduce me a bit.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, okay. I'm so sorry. Yeah. Okay, Mr. Subrodhani is currently a PhD scholar at the National Institute of Advanced Studies, NIS Bangalore, and his area of research is sociology of education. And he was also previously an assistant professor at the St. Aloysius Degree College in Bangalore, and has also worked with national and international NGOs and research organizations, including UNICEF, TIS, MIT, and NCT. And before you start your talk, sir, I would like to request our participants to please ensure that your videos and your mics are muted so that this program goes smoothly without any interruptions. And towards the end of this session, we will have a discussion period of around 30 minutes. So I request all our participants to post your questions or any queries or clarifications that you might have to post directly in the chat box, and we will address them at the end of the discussion. And yeah, so sir, I think you can carry on.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Lolgreen,
Miss Rini.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, Miss. Okay. Yeah, thank you so much for your kind introduction. I hope I'm audible to everyone. And yeah,
Yes, yes.
okay, can you all hear me? Okay, yeah, thank you, Fela. Okay, so first of all, thank you everyone for inviting me for this webinar. Even though I believe we are now having too much of webinars, but it has its positive sides too, and we are also being able to get in, connected with people across communities, regions, and even countries. So I have attended international webinars. So it is being like, uh, I mean, it's a great thing because we could hear really good scholars from across the globe on various issues. So that's the kind of a plus point. I mean, even though nothing could replace face-to-face interaction, and I hope this is temporary. And I would have really liked coming to Mizoram and interacting with students and teachers, and and learn also from you all. Anyway, having said that, I think now we have completely moved on to this virtual world where we are now interacting. Um, it is impossible now to learn during this pandemic time without these devices, say computer. So Lalrin just had an issue with a technical problem with her device, and she had to move to another device. So imagine, so what is it that has changed is this, that we have completely moved from a physical world to a virtual world. Now, how many of us really have this advantage uh, of having a device, or having multiple, forget about multiple device, having at least one device? How many of us? I think all of us present here today and attending this webinar, we are lucky that we are among the very few uh, with any kind of this kind of device where we can attend. And this goes, you know, uh, the same goes for school children who are now attending virtual classes, both at private and I'm not sure about government schools, but mostly private. But in some areas, some NGOs and government schools are also trying to do something. So now that itself is, so I'm asking to all of us that, are we then privileged? And I mean, I don't even have to, I think we don't have to wait for an answer, because we know that we are privileged because we can have this webinar, we can attend this webinar, and so on. So there is an inequality here, but what is the extent of an inequality? I mean, let us first just have a look at that, and then I'll move to my own experience and I mean, today's talk, I'll be talking mostly about higher education and inequality in higher education and my experience there of teaching as well as researching. So let us have a look at the percentage of of students in India with access to mobile phones and laptops. According to NSS 74th round of data, which are also available online, the proportions of persons like 14 years and above, 14 years to say 60 years, who can use computers. So there is one part called knowledge, right? Which is knowing how to operate a device, like knowing how to operate a computer or Android mobile phone. So what is the percentage of that? It says that in India, we have close to 8%. It's not even 8%. So 14 years and above. And I think most of the people who are here today, they are all 14 years and above. So only 8% of people have some kind of knowledge of, they can operate a phone, they can operate a laptop. So 92% of people do not have any knowledge of how to use it. And now we know that knowledge is not doesn't mean having knowledge doesn't mean having access to a device. Like maybe some students, they come to school and learn computers, and I'm sure many of the government schools in Mizoram, they have computers. Even I did a study in Mizoram, and there are I've seen schools with computers as part of I think RMSA. So there are computers. They might learn computers at school, but when they go back, they might not have something. I'm not saying in the context of Mizoram, of course, but in other places as well, because I don't know much about Mizoram in this context. So when they go back, they might not have any device at home. So there is no question of attending school. Now, in my field itself, there is, there in a school that I'm just giving an example from one school, class 12, 11, 12. So there are about 370 tribal children, and only 3 students have this Android phones. So you can see even if it's less than 1%. So as we move up, this goes down, the percentage of people with knowledge. So for example, 30 to 45 years, people with knowledge of any kind of device drops further to 4%. And it goes on, like 46 to 60, it is 1%. Just let me check the time. Okay. So let me talk about the state right now. I'm sitting and talking from, I'm sitting in Bangalore, and which is in Karnataka. And Bangalore, as you all know, is called the IT city of India, sometimes called the Silicon Valley of India, and so on. There are many such things because of his, software. It is known worldwide for its software industry. It's everything that's connected to it. So what is the percentage of people with access to internet and devices in Karnataka, in rural Karnataka? I'm not talking about Bangalore. Rural Karnataka, it's only 2%. So you see 98% people in rural Karnataka also, they do not have, majority of them do not have any access to this kind of devices. So I just wanted to give you some context about inequality in context. Now, now most of us are not aware of this inequality because, or we do not notice it, even though it's just in front of us. And sometimes, and most of the times, I think we do not notice it because we have it. So if we do not have it, a car probably will say that, okay, we are deprived in some sense because we do not have a car. So it's something like that. Probably that could be the reason we don't notice it. And but as a researcher and as anyone who's interested in inequality, and I suppose everyone who's attending this webinar, is interested in inequality, we cannot afford to be unaware of this fact. So in today's discussion, I would like to talk about inequality in higher education. As I discussed, I'll focus on 3 things in the broader context of Indian higher education, but then I will move to a specific context. So, and if I overshoot time, please tell me. Okay. So these 3 things are: first, why is education, especially higher education, is so important for the marginalized communities, like especially for the poor? And second is the situation of higher education in India. And the third, the question of merit. And at the end of it, I would also like to discuss the possible solutions for it. What could be done? So why do we talk so much about inequality? And what does it mean to be, unequal? And why is it now so embedded and around discussion of education, that everybody says, okay, education could, liberate, or education can give you something. I mean, I'm not saying education is just for economic purposes. education is for many various other, it extend other freedoms. It also you enjoy other freedoms that Fela has already touched upon some of the issues, gender equality, and so on. So now we, as a inequality, caste-based inequality, and you all are aware of what is caste system in India, and we're all aware of this caste system and caste-based discrimination. So I'll come elaborate more on that. So at every level of our society, we have been trying to, now we are trying to move away from traditional jobs. So earlier there were fixed jobs. For example, someone, a carpenter, his son or daughter, I mean, mostly sons, they would also become carpenters. Or some were working in the sanitation, cleaning latrines and bathrooms and everything, public toilets. Uh, these are all traditional jobs. Now people, especially Dalits and Adivasis and tribals, they are trying to move away from these traditional jobs so that, they can diversify, they have more freedom um, and more bargaining power with others, and apart from contributing to their family's income and so on. So, and but how much are we being able to move from our unorganized sector? So unorganized sector, as you all know, is agricultural labor, daily wage labor, domestic helps, everything. I mean, this is according to NCEUS, which is National Commission for Enterprises in the Unorganized Sector, or popularly known as the Arjun Sengupta Committee report. It reported in 2007 that 92% of our population are in the organized sector without any steady income. So I know what I'm doing today, or maybe for the next 3-4 days, but I do not know what will be my monthly income. I don't have a fixed income, or I don't know whether I will have any job at all at the end of this month or not. And organized sector is just the opposite, with some kind of security of jobs. I know I'm going to office, or I'm having a steady income, monthly income, or whatever. So that is 8%. With PF and this kind of facilities, or even without PF. So you can imagine the kind of disparity. So 92% of these people, they look at education, especially the poor and marginalized, that education is something that could take them out of this, of these unfreedoms, of inequality, of, they should also increase their freedom. They would be more mobile. They can do things, and they will not be, under any kind of pressure, or in the sense traditional pressure, like, because you are lower caste, so you have to do certain jobs. So they now, so Constitution of India gives that right to them, but the society still, does not give that right, does not allow them that right to, especially for Dalits and tribals. So I'm here, Philip Bourgois, he has talked about this conjugated oppression, which means how your historical position, historically, if your family were poor, you are more likely to be poor. If your family was rich, you are more likely to attend good school, and so on. So how family income and historical belonging, in a sense that earlier Brahmins only had access to knowledge and education, so they could exploit education and everything, and not others. So that created a disparity, and that historically gets transferred, that generational advantages gets transferred to the next generations. So this conjugated operation, especially, and these are various choice of work. So people want to move away from this kind of traditional occupations for various reasons: choice of work, aspirations, income, and so on. And and sometimes, as I said, their historical backwardness, a result of conjugated oppression, also kind of has an impact on it. As a fella talked about, that women did not have access to education, and probably we can see that still that how that kind of plays out in the present context. So this conjugated oppression is kind of, multiple accesses of oppression, caste, tribe, gender, and region. Region is also something like, you come from a remote area, then you have to go to a city to study. And then those who are already living in a city, they with just, they already have a living place. The college is next to their home. They just, it becomes much easier for them. But imagine someone going from Mizoram to Delhi, or to study in JNU, or to Bombay to study at Tata Institute of Social Sciences, or anywhere for that matter. So they have to figure out scholarship. They have to figure out, multiple things. So rent. They have to rent a place. They have to look for accommodation. They have to look for everything, and their families need to be equipped enough. Families need to have a steady income so that they could send regular money to them. How many families could do it? So these are certain things that I want to flag here. And so it says that economic growth has post-liberalization, that is post-1990s, economic growth has not only led to income inequality, and we thought that, the globalization will probably globalization will help eradicate or eliminate inequality, but that has not happened. On the contrary, research show that economic growth has not only led to income inequality, but social inequality has been entrenched rather than erased in India. In the capitalist system that we are, operating within, the capitalist system. So class become inseparable from caste. So lower caste also most likely to be the lower class also. Women are more likely to not have a job as compared to men. So region also, like someone in Calcutta or Delhi is more likely to get good education or go abroad because there is also this information flow, than anyone sitting in remote part of Jharkhand or Bihar and so on. So now higher education, and now let me move to higher education. The difficulties faced by marginalized groups in accessing higher education have increased over the time, even though a greater number are accessing higher education today than ever before. Now we have more marginalized groups in higher education than before. But the problem is that that due to this increased number of aspirants, without a corresponding increase in quality regional and public institutions. So number of aspirants have increased, probably, and not only probably, there are more students even from every sections of the society are attending schools and colleges, but the quality of them are not that good. So when they apply for something, they just have a degree, but when they apply for something, they might not be they might not get through. And others might, coming from private institutes or coaching centers, they might have an age over them. So on the other hand, what has happened that starting from there were a lot of philanthropic institutes earlier, but starting from the 70s and 80s, a lot of still. So beginning in the 1970s and 80s, a lot of these educational institutes with high fees that have made it increasingly difficult for marginalized groups. Like, I mean, a poor person probably cannot think of going to the private colleges or even schools. And government schools and colleges, then their competition is very high to get through quality educational institutes. Now, also because in the context of, you might have heard about Rohit Vemula case and other conflicts in institutions of higher education say Hyderabad Central University, JNU. So we keep hearing about that conflicts between or the socially opposite groups like Hindutva groups, or Dalit groups, or uh, or Brahmins, or others, lower caste. That is because I think education is very paradoxical in nature, as in both a field of securing social mobility and promoting equality, and at the same time for reproducing inequality and preventing social mobility. In recent times, public, as I have said, so also even in educational institutions like IITs, there are studies that show that there are prejudices in IITs and in higher education institutions against the Dalits. So even though our constitution gives us a lot of rights and a document that we can bank upon, but as a society we have not changed, and this also reflects um, in our interactions with others. So, and another thing is that despite the experiences of students in public and private higher education institutions, mm, is very is an area of which remains understudied. Uh, I think this is a field which has not been studied. There is a lot of focus on school education, but higher education has not been studied that well. So we do not also have enough data. So and we do not also even whatever little studies are there, that is more confined to higher education public institutions, not so much of private institutions. So we do not know what is happening inside private institutions. Uh, So, and our debate has completely moved from, to a more redistributive state versus the efficient market. Like state should give something, or otherwise it's the efficient market. Like market is very efficient, or market will solve all the problem. But we see that has not happened. But there are also other experiences, as I said, like philanthropic institutes and everything that were there earlier. Now a number of these philanthropic religious organizations, also a lot of missionary colleges, or even Hindu or mathas or Islamic institutions, they also provided a lot of mostly the Christian institutions, and most sought after institutions also. But the number of them maybe have remained constant, but have not increased. But the number of aspirants have increased, let us say. So, and many of them are being forced to levy some kind of, fees, which many cannot afford. So, okay. So now how much time do I have? Can someone please tell me?
Yeah, the program is still 1 o'clock, I think. Yeah. So it's 12:32
Okay.
right now.
So I think I'll just take another 10 minutes. Is it okay? Because because we
Yes,
want to
go on,
have
sir.
at
It's
least
okay.
20-30 minutes of discussions. No? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah. So okay, let me just then dive straight into the this historical marginalization in the context of caste and tribe, and then I move to my experience and in the sense of the college which followed some inclusive policy and what happens. So one of the things that we talk about is merit. We say that merit is something that merit is unbiased. I mean, if you have the quality, if you have the talent, then you can crack any exam, or it's unbiased. So merit actually is something that even if you're a poor person, if you come from a poor family, uh, you can crack any exam if you have the talent. uh, Now merit is in a way that it's a very modern concept, because in the context of that the ideal, the talented, the most uh, a talented person should get this job because it is related to governance. We should be it should be ruled by intellectual people, so therefore we cannot afford to select anyone, right? So we should have a merit-based selection. So kind of so merit is closely associated with the egalitarian era, that is in the modernity, that it kind of old whatever inherited mm, how do I say, inherited facilities that I have, or inherited capitals I have, it doesn't matter if you're talented. And merit is premised on notions of modernity, justice, and equal opportunities, irrespective of one's social position, of ascribed status. The process of the modern bureaucratic state, corporatization, and achievement in industrial and post-industrial societies are associated with merit. The modern formal education system also follow this pattern through a selection procedure modeled around this inclusion and exclusion based on meritocracy. So when we say we are talented, we'll be selecting most talented. So we also say that those who are not talented will be excluded. So for example, there are 100 students and there are 30 positions. So we will only take the top 30. So what happens that then top 30 becomes the most meritorious and we select them. And we say that the 70% are not talented enough, in some sense. But actually, if you could look into it, if the requirement of the job is 10%, then we'll only select 10. If it is 5 or 1, we'll select accordingly, right? So it's not about then merit. It's how much you are taking. So if you take 100 people, then all the 100 becomes eligible. So there is a problem there. That's what I'm trying to flag here. So merit is, because it has been, of course, sociologically, it has gone under sociological scrutiny, and ever since the publication of Michael Young's book called The Rise of Meritocracy. So merit-based educational selection became a necessity in the context of prevailing social economic system based on achievement and competition and legitimization of the same. So in popular understanding, merit is seen as an individual virtue, capability, and capability, the result of one's hard work, talent, and perseverance, divorced from the social context one inherits. So in a recent study of merit-based scholarship recipients in Australia, Charles and Black and Keddy, they did this study that merit-based selection is justified by the privileged students in higher education as an entitlement. That we have earned it, a reward for their hard work, and not because of their social position and network. In India too, the practice of merit-based selection is regarded as justified. And affirmative action, like reservation, for the marginalized group is viewed as unjust, because some say we are talented, but they are not, but they are getting through because of the meritocracy. So those who are not very meritorious, and these terms like, those who are meritorious, what do we call them? It's like talented, intelligent, achiever, hardworking, deserving, gifted, good student, and so on. Just 1 minute. Yeah. Similarly, those who are not so, those who do not qualify, so do we call them, for example, quota students or bad students or rowdies or loafers or unintelligent, dumb, and so on. And they are seen as wasting government's money and sometimes families' money and so on. So now sociologists have questions this, question the egalitarian credentials of meritocracy, pointing to the problems and limitations of defining and measuring meritocracy on the one hand, and the role of social, cultural, economic, and political factors determining one's social status and merit on the other hand. So cultural and social. Sorry. So, so sociologists have questioned this meritocracy. They say that actually it's so cultural capital and social capital that creates this merit. Like, for example, you are in a poor family, you don't know, so probably you could not go for maths tuition, even though you're good in maths, in a simple terms, but you did not, you could not afford maths tuition and for a competitive exam that requires that kind of training. Okay, so those who could go with financial support, they could go and learn. Even both of them are, we suppose, even if they both of them are equal, so then they crack those exams and they become meritorious. So how economic factors, cultural capital, as we know, capital means, as we all know, which something which has a exchange value. So cultural capital is something then when someone has someone can draw upon from his or her community. Like some communities, for example, my family, if my family has knows English, or we eat, or some cultural traits, or that the dominant culture follow, the dress, everything. So someone coming from a rural area, rural Bihar or Jharkhand or any Himachal Pradesh, they might not be so confident. So, but those who are elite, they already have the dominant cultural capital that they have inherited, from their family. Then social capital. Social capital is again, which capital means which can be, exchanged, as I said, which can be replaced, which can replace money, but still has the same exchange value. For example, social contracts. Now, today I'm here because I know my friend Fela, and who introduced me to you all. It's because I am also a PhD student. He's also a PhD student. So since we have come to this stage, we know each other, and we have a community of our own. Similarly, if you study in a private college where children of influential people study, or if your uncle is an influential person in the government, or your brother lives in Delhi, this kind of social contacts, then information you get, how to fill up a form in JNU, because your brother knows it, or your sister knows it. So this kind of social capital then also helps you, to read which book you want to read, how to apply. So everything then becomes your network. It's not just money. It's money is just one factor, but how your social and cultural capital then helps you navigate. So I hope I've been able to make my case. And since there is a paucity of time, I would like to so basically what Bourdieu, who is a French philosopher and social scientist, who said that, he talked about the social reproduction theory. Social reproduction means the society keeps reproducing itself. How? That rich becomes richer, or they remain rich, maybe once in a while, but rich also become poor, but generally. And poor people also become, like if I'm from a poor family, I'll go to the government school, or I'll go to my village school. If I'm rich, my father can afford to, or my mother can afford to send me to another good school. And then I go to that school, I have more friends, or I study more, so my number of years of schooling increases, or my peer group is so good that I know if I don't know maths, I can, or English, I have some problem with any subject, my peers can also help me, my teachers are well equipped, trained. So this also then helps me navigate through. So increases or makes me socially more mobile than others. Now, so this is basically social reproduction. And so, okay, now, so is then merit, again, I would like to demystify merit. In a sense, I worked in this college not in the college that you mentioned, but another college where it's called the Loafers College, because this college is a college where everyone, whoever is not getting admission anywhere, they could join. Even some people, even after failing in 2-3 subjects, they could join the college after clearing their backlog papers. And you can see the kind of and mostly students came from very marginalized. Their parents worked as sanitation, or daily wage laborers, domestic help, and so on. So these students came with very low marks, but the college created an atmosphere. The college created an atmosphere. College, some of them also were working children. So the college created an ambience where they could study. There was no homework, because we knew that they would not be able to go home and study, because they live with their 3-4 brothers and sisters and their parents just in a room, so they cannot do any homework. So the college functioned in such a way that you give them work, and then the teacher again after class teachers work with them. Then English isn't a problem. So remedial classes. So in a college, this happens for 3 years. And after 3 years, these students who failed earlier in many of their exam in +2, when they completed their graduation, BA or BSc, whatever, or BCom, they also became rank holders. Like 25 of them out of 35 students, in 1 year, they got first class. So that means that the college could create an ambience. College could create an ambience where these students can compete. At the same time, not only competition, they also learned about the Indian society. They learned about the constitution, so they could reflect. They can argue with others. So one of the students said, when initially I joined, he said, look, I know I come from a poor family, so I know what does it mean to be poor. I can talk about it in debates in my language. So I don't know English. So when the topic is in English, I can't say anything, even though I have more knowledge about that subject than others. So this kind of things, even though your subjective knowledge is more, but because you don't speak English, you cannot express it. So you feel inferior in front of others. So the college then took care of these things. I'm not saying that we should feel inferior about if we don't know English. I mean, we should not. But knowing English is not bad, so it's both. If I don't know English, I should be confident enough to say that, but even I know, it's better. So college kind of created this kind of ambience where students could, for 3 years, they performed. They were taken through such a journey. It's a very relaxed environment. There were a lot of debates happening. Students were given a lot of responsibilities to do. So they really did very well. Okay. So I'll end it here, and I think the government institutions, more and more government institutions and philanthropic institutions should come together and learn from each other. And without government institutions and government investment, it is not possible to reduce. Market will not do anything, because market is dependent on profit. Imagine you have, I think health and education, as many argue, that common schooling or common college, and there will be more interaction also between multiple classes. So rich and poor people can interact. Now there is no discussion happening, because rich people are going to another college. They do not know the experiences of the poor. So if they come together in similar situations, in similar college, but the good colleges, then I think so. The government resource is the main thing that I think can do this, and of course private resource as well. but philanthropic, not private profit-making institutions. Yeah. So thank you so much for giving me so much time. And if I have not been able to be clear on certain things, please ask me questions. I will try to address it there. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Subrato. That was very insightful again. And there are a couple of questions already pouring in, but since we were not able, I was not able to give a very good introduction at the beginning, I don't think that it's too late to have a brief vote of thanks. So today's program is organized by the Department of Education, Government Kozol College under RUSA Equity Initiatives. And I would like to extend a very heartfelt gratitude to all our respected resource persons and all the participants on behalf of our respected principal, Mr. Arlerin Tluanga. And we thank each one of you for taking the time of your, I'm sure, very busy schedule to attend today's program. And there are two questions here for Mr. Ruat Fela, but I'm sure that Mr. Subato is also, sir, you can also answer the questions. So I'll just read it out. Since we are a little pressed for time, I'll just go straight to the questions without any more delay. So the first question is, do you think inclusion a practicable concept with reference to your research findings? Should I repeat? Okay, the first
Yeah,
question
I
is,
hear it. Yeah,
okay.
yeah. I think yes. My answer is yes, because maybe we may not have a very good infrastructure and facilities. And if you look at the research findings that I have presented, also even parents of the children with special needs considered physical and architecture barrier as the least significant barriers for their children. So I think it's more the problem is more with the attitude of the different stakeholders. Yeah. So it is quite possible. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, sir. And the second question is, according to you, what do you think are the future prospects of inclusive education in Mizoram? Okay.
The future prospect.
Yeah. What do you think are the future prospects of inclusive education in Mizoram?
Okay, I think that's a quite a difficult question, I think.
Yes, if Mr. Subrato can also answer if you want.
Yeah, if Mr. Subrato can add in.
1 minute. Yeah, I think Fela, you have to answer because it's in the context of Mizoram. Yeah, but I would like to add, maybe once you say something, then I can add something in the larger context. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Now, if we look at the condition of India at large, like after independence, the government of India is trying to universalize elementary education after 10 years of independence. But till today, we cannot achieve 100% enrollment and 100% retention rate. And there are so many factors like why we cannot achieve 100% retention and 100% enrollment, because due to some factors like gender and disability and minority problem. And when it comes to Mizoram, I think those are not the factors. Of course, they are the factors that contribute to why we cannot achieve 100% retention and universalization of elementary education. But now we have different schemes coming up, and we used to have way back in like 1986 maybe, we have Operation Blackboard, and now we have Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan, and we have Rashtriya Madhyamik Shiksha Abhiyan, and now we have Samagra Shiksha Abhiyan. And the government is trying its best, but it is not always possible for even for the government to control each and every employees or teachers. And so I think in order to have a like uh, uh, like to predict the future occurrence, I think the government of India, Mizoram, should give more importance to the training on inclusive education for teachers, so that. And now we have this new education policy 2020, and in that policy it has been mentioned that during the teacher training courses, at least maybe around 6 months may be devoted for the education of for inclusive education, and especially for children with special needs. So if the government implement this national education policy, I hope like we have a brighter and better future when it comes to a successful inclusion. Yeah, that's my opinion. Yeah.
Okay, can I add? So I slightly disagree with Fela, in the sense that government, of course, government is trying, but like look at this, in education, like in the first Kothari Commission, first policy, education policy of India, which is also known as Kothari Commission report, it said 6% of GDP. GDP should be given to education, 6% of GDP. But we have never done that. No government has done it. It's slightly more than 3%. Slightly more than 3%. Yeah, but it's never more than 4%. So you can imagine it's what was promised. 6% of GDP, and we only get 3% of GDP, so half of it. So what is it? And also, I think the problem is also that most of the elite, most of us who work, and their children, they go to private schools. So government has, there is no pressure, and I think there is no pressure for the government schools to perform. But that is not, that is one thing. Also, government schools teachers perform better. They are well trained, but there are multiple problems like election duty. They have hundreds of things they are occupied with, and sometimes one or two schools have maybe one teacher only for 2 teachers for the entire from class 1 to 4, and those teachers are also not very well trained. So these are many issues. So sometimes we just there is a tendency to just blame government teachers. That is also not true, because there are good and bad teachers everywhere. But at least government teachers, the government ensures that to get a government job, you have to be trained. Now, to bypass their own rule, what the government does, they employ guest teachers so that they don't need those qualifications. So the government keeps doing all these things. So I think that's something that needs to be, government has to come out of those kind of practices. In private, on the other hand, efficiency, teachers coming on time. Yeah, but they're not many, private institutes, private schools, at least at the low level, they're not that good. In there are studies in Andhra Pradesh and other, so there's the private, suddenly there are, many schools have mushroomed, private schools, but they do not have quality teachers. So I think it's the government money and training, quality training, that could actually do something for education in future. And of course, elite also should send, rather than just saying, we should also send our children to. We mean those who are elite. Yeah, they should, our middle class, those who can afford, they should also send their children to government schools. Then we can, it will improve.
Okay, thank you, sir. Are there any more questions from the participants? We have, I think, a couple more minutes. And
yeah, I think someone can just unmute and ask rather than writing it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, if there is anything.
Yeah, the participants are welcome to unmute their mics and yeah, ask a direct question to our speakers. And okay, and if there are no more questions, Mr. Tlonga has posted the feedback form on the chat box. Please fill this up so that you can receive your e-certificates. And is there anyone else who would like to say something or give an input, Dr. Tlonga, since you're the host?
Yes, I think they are the best in this field, social and education exclusion and inclusion. Dr. Rodfella, he is one of the expert, one of the best person in this field. He has mentioned very clearly, and I much appreciate it. And Mr. Sibrot also, he has presented very clearly. I think I don't have much more to comment.
Okay, thank you, sir. So, okay, I think then that'll be the end of today's program. So I request our listeners to please fill up the feedback form again. And thank you so much, everyone, for attending today's program. And yes, I once again apologize profusely for the technical problems at the start of the session. But I think that, it was a very successful and productive one today. So, Mr. Subroto and Mr. Radfila, thank you so much for your
Yeah, thank you so much.
expert
Thank you,
opinion.
everyone. Yeah, thank you, everyone. I really enjoyed
Thank you.
and hope maybe some time we could meet all of us face to face and discuss more. Thank you for giving me this opportunity, and thank you to all of you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. And yes. Goodbye,
Can I?
everyone.
Yeah. Goodbye.
Yeah, bye. Bye.
Bye. Bye.